Millions of believers around the world were born into Christianity. They grew up hearing about Jesus, attending church, and reading the New Testament. But over time, many begin to notice something strange. The Bible feels deeply Jewish, but their faith doesn't. Throughout the Bible, the call of God is not to religion, but to relationship. Turning from sin and returning to God. Belief is not intellectual agreement. It's allegiance to the one he sent. And to be born again is to be transformed from the inside out. When Yeshua spoke to Nicodemus, a Pharisee and teacher of Israel, he said he must be born from above, but never told him to abandon his Jewish identity. On the contrary, he expected him to understand these spiritual truths. It's about joining God's eternal plan, rooted in Israel, fulfilled in Yeshua, and open to all who will believe. Yeshua was not the founder of a new religion. He said, "I did not come to abolish the law or the prophets, but to fulfill them," as the Passover lamb, offering himself not to replace the covenant, but to renew it in his own blood. Those who followed him didn't see themselves as leaving Judaism. But when modern Christianity teaches that faith in Yeshua means stepping out of Jewish context, it's being removed. Yeshua never left his roots. He lived, died, rose again, and ascended as the Jewish Messiah. When the Apostle Paul wanted to explain how Gentiles fit into the people of God, he didn't describe two religions. He described one tree. It wasn't a Christian tree and a Jewish tree. There was, and still is, one tree, one story, one covenant people. The moment faith becomes disconnected from its source, it loses its life. Gentile believers are not called to replace Israel. They're invited to join her, to be part of something older, deeper, and richer than any man-made religion, the covenant of God with his people. If the gospel you believe separates you from the story of Israel, then it's not the gospel Paul preached. If the faith in Yeshua was seen as a Jewish movement, it was centered in Jerusalem, led by Jewish apostles, grounded in the Hebrew scriptures, and connected to the temple and synagogue. But after the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, the Roman Empire began to push Jewish identity to the margins. As more Gentiles joined the faith, many began to distance themselves from Jewish customs, not for theological reasons, but to avoid persecution. By the time of Emperor Constantine in the 4th century, this distancing became official. The Council of Nicaea in 325 AD formally rejected the biblical calendar and the Jewish roots of the faith. Passover was replaced with Easter. The Sabbath was moved to Sunday. Jewish believers were excluded, and anything connected to the people of Israel was labeled heresy or superstition. What began as a fulfillment of Jewish prophecy was transformed into a Roman institution. From that point on, believing in Jesus meant joining a new religion, separated from Israel, detached from the Torah. Tragically, that shift buried the roots of the gospel for nearly 2,000 years. The gospel was never about replacing Israel. It was never about starting a new religion. It was, and still is, a call to return to the God of Abraham, to the promises made through the prophets, to the covenant fulfilled in the Messiah. The new covenant doesn't cancel the old, it renews it. It doesn't abandon the root, it brings life to the branches. Today, more and more believers are awakening to this truth. They're realizing that their faith isn't disconnected from the Hebrew scriptures, it's built on them. That following Yeshua doesn't mean leaving behind the God of Israel, it means drawing closer to him, the Jewish Messiah who makes all things new. Not a break, a return.